My name's Charlie Adlard and I'm the artist of The Walking Dead. Over here we have the digital area, my Mac computer and my Cintiq, where I do all the digital stuff. I've worked for perhaps 25 years drawing in this studio, so that's quite a lot of issues of The Walking Dead. As you can probably see, I'm a big fan of film posters, so here's obviously a classic trio. These are just happen to coincidentally probably be my 3 most favourite movies of all time. And these are the original film posters from their period. Over here we've got another Tommy Lee Edwards. He does a lot of stuff for Lucasfilm as well. Obviously that's Indiana Jones. Here's a classic Bernie Fuchs. Over here we've got a Robert McGuinness, who was particularly famous for doing most of the James Bond American posters back in the 60s. That's an actual Bond girl. And finally, one of my favourite pieces and by one of my favourite American illustrators, Bob Peak. And this is a prelim to the 70s movie version of Rollerball. I just think that's fantastic, and I actually prefer it to the actual poster, which is obviously slicker. It just works a lot better. The looseness to that is very attractive. I love that one. Well, this is Alex Toth. This is probably the guy that's had more influence on me than anybody else. It sort of ties into my love for illustrative artwork as well, because this is a lot more illustrative than, say, a lot of comic artists at the time were doing. There's a kind of an element of realism in this that no one else is really doing. You know, there's an element of design, an element of black, and a beautiful use of black and white in every sort of panel. And he was a master of doing sort of really great, simple graphic stuff as well. If you can tell a story in one line, why bother use 20? You know, if I could hone my own personal artwork down to that, I'd be as happy as Larry, you know, whereas Toth had done it. He'd managed to sort of succeed in that kind of just one graphic mark would tell, you know, the story of the whole thing. So it's what you want to do as an artist, you know, the bravery of just knowing when to stop. I think I'd really admire in a lot of artists. You know, I'd be the first to admit I don't have that bravery. I just keep noodling away sometimes until I've got it. It's just beautifully drawn, and everything is just beautifully laid out. He's got the perfect camera angles for everything, you know, really inventive ways of setting out his every panel. Just in my opinion, a true genius. I'm a storyteller at the end of the day, so it's the story that's king. So I enjoy telling a story. If we're talking Walking Dead, Robert Kirkman will send me the script, which is here. It is printed off in front of you. Then, as you see here, this is a page I've just started, and I'll use quite a blunt 2H pencil to rough it out. As you can probably see here, it's very light, very rough. Backgrounds I'll hardly do. So I'm just literally roughing it out here. I'll get the faces pretty right, and the bodies, you know, will be fairly accurate, but pretty much everything else is fairly rough. So I move on to softer pencils, which actually give a darker line. So I've got my main pencil is a propelling pencil, which has got an HB lead in at the moment, so that gives a slightly darker. So I'll ink it I'll use it like a pen and ink these lines like that. So I'm basically going over the pencils, or the lighter pencils. And then if I need any heavy blacks, I'll go on to actually a 5 or 6B pencil, which obviously when it gets blunter provides a lovely sort of thick line. So that's the process, and that is pretty much a page done. Believe it or not, it only takes me about 2 weeks to do an issue. So really in a trade, what you're holding is about, you know, if it's 6 issues, that's about 3 months work. I'm not so worried about the consistency of The Walking Dead, because I've been working on it for 14 years now, and if if I was the same 14 years ago stylistically as I am now, it would be, well, it'd be quite depressing. So I'm quite accepting of the fact that my art changes over that period of time. I mean, it won't change radically per issue or per month or per even 6 months, but I think over the course of time, I'd like to think I'm still improving. And people always say, what's your most proudest achievement in art? And I say, well, it'll be the page I hopefully do tomorrow, because you'd like to think you've improved that one tiny bit to do a better page the next day. I truly believe, you know, comic art is an art form. It's not some sort of craft or anything like that. But having said that, it's a commercial art form. You've still got to abide by the rules of commerciality, and with those rules comes deadlines. So I still think it's very important that you have to, before you become professional, for instance, make sure that you can actually do a page in a certain amount of time. I mean, there are obvious things with digital stuff. You feel you can be more adventurous with digital stuff because you know you can always undo it, or you can add as many layers as you want if you want to experiment. You can't do that with, you know, obviously a physical bit of artwork. It's the only, you've got one layer and that's it. So you do perhaps feel a bit more conservative when you're doing drawing for real. The good and bad thing at the same time with digital stuff is you can zoom in right on extreme detail. Look what I'm doing. I'm going right in on something that's only that big on the paper. So, but that can also obviously be a downside as well, because you end up getting a bit too obsessed with the minutiae of drawing something, because you've zoomed in and you're concentrating on something that's going to be tiny in the original, in the actual finished piece. You know, some of the perspective tools it has are just fantastic. You can just, you know, have 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, you know, all running at the same time, parallel lines, things like that, which again, if you're doing it physically, would be a lot harder to do. You can obviously, as is on the Mac here, you can import a photograph and ink straight over it without too much hassle. You can add effects a lot easier. So, yeah, there's a lot more advantages to it as well. But the way I perceive it is just a different way of working. It's as simple as that. This is a French comic called Vampire State Building. It's a 2-book series and I'm on book 2 now. Vampire State is more of your sort of traditional thriller rather than, you know, even though it's obviously about vampires. Yeah, it's a lot more action thriller-esque. And it all, like I said before, it all goes towards my love of European comics as well. I've never set out in my life to ever do something where I've thought I'm going to make this look different. What I tend to do is use different pieces of equipment which by default make the artwork look different, because it's, you know, and it goes the same for digital stuff, you know, because I'm working digitally, it does look slightly different to how I draw it on the drawing board, but I still think it looks like my artwork. It's just drawn with because I elect, for instance, the pen tool I use is more like a chiseled nib, so you've got that sort of more brushy effect with the pen artwork. I sort of achieved my dream about almost 20 years ago, which was, you know, working in comics. so that can be ticked off. I'm more than happy to carry on what I'm doing now and just get better. But I'm literally more than happy sitting here doing what I've been doing for the rest of my life. I'm living the dream.